It turns out that Charlie D'Amelio was not happy that I discussed why her brand has completely and utterly failed from a marketing perspective because she just blocked me on TikTok. So, in celebration of that, we're going to continue to discuss where the D'Amelios went wrong, why I believe this is their downfall, and how they fumbled this $1 billion bag so badly that we need to analyze it as a society. So, I'm a nobody. I'm just somebody. I have an MBA in marketing. I'm interested in this kind of stuff, and I love applying things that I've learned in school to pop culture and to media and to things happening today. Because looking at the social media world through a business lens is really interesting. And I think it's funny that she blocked me on TikTok because one, the only way that you can get upset by something is if it triggers you because it's a little bit true. So obviously what I said resonated in some way, otherwise it wouldn't have triggered her. And two, I was very respectful in my delivery. I was very gracious toward them. I only spoke about business principles and I tried to analyze it as objectively as I could. I didn't slander anybody. I didn't insult anybody's looks or anybody's personality. That's something I would never do. That's just not in my personality. However, when you're in the public eye and when you are a, multi-millionaire, that comes at a cost. And that cost is we are allowed to discuss you and analyze you in a public setting because you're a public figure. So let's continue to discuss exactly where they went wrong from a marketing perspective. So in order for somebody to want to buy from you, you need to have an element of likability, relatability, and you also need something called self-awareness. You need to have an awareness of who you are, but also how the public views you. So for the average person working a 9-to-5 job who is making minimum wage, America is a very poor country in the grand scheme of things with a very huge gap between the top 1% and the rest 99%. So you need to have a self-awareness of how you are being perceived. And if you don't have that self-awareness, that's when you run into lots of issues and people can turn against you very quickly, which we've seen multiple times with multiple examples. So, for example, you need to understand that 99% of America is looking at you and your sister as two people that just won the lottery. You went from being a completely unknown person to overnight being completely and utterly wealthy, obscenely famous, and given essentially every opportunity in the world that you could ever want. It's literally like akin to winning the lottery, but even better because instead of just getting money, you are also getting power, which to be fair is an extension of money. But you need to be aware of that fact. So whatever you're going through, if you're having mental health problems, if you are struggling with that situation, of course you can be, that's a valid experience. It's probably such an isolating experience to be that famous, something I will never understand, something I will never understand, and something I never want to understand because it seems terrible. However, you need to pick who you're confiding in a little bit more carefully, otherwise you risk looking like an entitled, unlikable brat, which is what happened, not my words, that's just how the public perceived them. Insert the snail incident, insert complaining about the followers, insert a reality show in which every single scene they're complaining about being cyberbullied and about how they are miserable and about all these issues that they have. It's a valid experience. Everybody has mental health issues, but at a certain point, you need to have the ability to step back and look at your life and say, oh my God, I am so grateful. Like, people are dying in the world. People are fleeing from wars. People are starving. People in your own country cannot afford food. And here you are, somebody, 17 years old, who will never have to work again a day in her life if she doesn't choose, who can marry whoever she wants, who can travel the world, who, if she doesn't want to be famous, can move to Sweden, buy a mansion, create a new identity and a new life, and simply live on a farm in her quiet and her peace. Every opportunity is available to you. So, when you make your entire brand circulate around, I'm upset, I'm having mental health issues, I'm complaining, I can't deal with the fame, that's not relatable to your audience who are looking at you as a aspirational figure. People want to be you. We're growing up in this world where your audience, young girls specifically, are looking up to you and they want to be you. So when you make that your entire brand, you become unlikable. And when you become unlikable and you become unrelatable, people don't necessarily want to buy from you, no matter how many followers you have. And I also do question, honestly, if their followers were real or not, because the numbers just aren't adding up as an outside observer. Maybe that's not true. So this is what they should have done instead. The biggest mistake, if I were to have to pick one, of which there were many, was the reality show. There's something to say about a certain level of mystique that celebrities have. There's pros and cons with it, right? We can look at somebody like Beyonce. She doesn't do interviews. She doesn't promote her albums. She barely posts on social media. She's very mysterious. She didn't used to be. Nowadays, not a lot of us know her as a person, and her brand and her identity is not being relatable. Her identity and her teams have worked very hard to make her a godlike figure who is perfect, and you can see that across media. She's constantly referred to as a queen, constantly compared to God. People literally worship her. That's her brand, that's her identity. She embodies perfection. She's not relatable. And that's also something to say in regard to why her brands aren't as successful, because people don't really understand her identity. So when she has a brand, we don't know if that's an extension of her identity. Whereas if you look at somebody like Kim Kardashian, we know that Skims is an extension of who she is and something that she loves. She's not curing cancer over here, okay? But she's selling something that's authentic to her because we know who she is, because she's been very honest about her and she's chosen to live her life very publicly. Very publicly. Whereas somebody like Beyonce doesn't, and music industry, different examples, but there's pros and cons. But if you're gonna be somebody like a social media celebrity that's sharing everything and you don't have that level of self-awareness where you really should be waking up every morning and be grateful, you're going to have your audience turn against you. So what should have happened is the family should have had a family meeting and they should have approached the situation very thoughtfully and very delicately and thought, who is it that I want to be and what do I want to do with this new power that I've been awarded? Instead of that, instead of sitting at the drawing board and thinking, you know what, if I'm going to start a business, what's authentic to me? Instead of asking a question like, how can I help the most amount of people? How can I add something novel to the market that doesn't exist? How can I fill a need that is currently in X market, whether it's the shoe market or the dance market? Maybe she wants to open up a dance studio. How can I fill a need that exists? Instead of doing that, they saw the cash cow and they milked it for all it was worth. Brand deals, commercials, TV show appearances, every quick, easy, get dirty rich kind of way that they could have made money, they did it, okay? And now they're reaping what they sowed because they're starting businesses after businesses and they're slowly fading to irrelevance. And I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm saying it as somebody, as an outside observer, objectively and statistically. Their brands are failing and they are being propped up by ad dollars and SEO and advertisements and all these things, but at the heart of it, there's no soul to their brand and there's no longevity to their brand because there's no longevity to them as individuals. They weren't interesting enough to have a reality show. And I think that was a really big mistake because had they allowed themselves to be a little bit more mysterious, we could have filled in the gaps thinking, oh, maybe Charlie's like this, maybe they're like that. But when we have a camera in your bedroom, basically just watching you 24/7, and we see the way that you interact, there was an unrelatability that I felt when I watched their show that I've never felt before. Because you might hate the Kardashians, but there's an element of their family and the way that they interact with one another that we see ourselves in. And I know that you do, because if you didn't, they wouldn't be as popular as they are. But we watch the way that they interact with their mom, and there's a level of camaraderie and family dynamics that is relatable to us. When I watched the damelio show, I felt like they hated each other. Honestly, I felt like I was watching a family that was just the personification of late stage capitalism and social media and how separated they were. They're always on their phones. There was no connection between them. And because of that, we didn't really see ourselves in them and instead just saw them for what they are, which is these aspirational figures who aren't appreciative of the platforms that they have and the power that they have and the money that they have. And that was the slow death of them, their brand, and the way they were perceived. Let me know if you want part 3.